When 17-year-old Marcus Rivera stood before Judge William Thornfield for stealing a $4.99 sandwich, he expected punishment. What he didn't expect was for the judge to burst into cruel laughter at his desperate situation. The packed courtroom watched in horror as the respected judge mocked the homeless teenager's story about being hungry and alone. People gasped. Someone whispered, "That's not right." Marcus felt his face burn with shame as tears threatened to fall. But then, Judge Thornfield did something that no one in his 15 years on the bench had ever seen him do. Something so shocking that it left the entire courtroom frozen in stunned silence. What happened next would change not just Marcus's life, but the lives of hundreds of other homeless youth across the country. Because sometimes, the most shocking moments reveal the most powerful truths about love, justice, and the promises we make to protect the people we care about most. This is the story of a homeless teenager, a grandmother's final gift, and a judge who proved that sometimes the system works exactly the way it's supposed to, when people remember that behind every case file is a human being worthy of hope. The heavy wooden doors of Hennepin County Courthouse creaked as Marcus Rivera pushed them open. Cold February air followed him inside, making him shiver in his thin jacket. The jacket was too big for him. Someone had given it to him at a shelter 3 weeks ago. It smelled like cigarettes and had a small hole near the left pocket. Marcus looked around the busy courthouse lobby. People in suits walked fast, carrying briefcases and talking on phones. Lawyers in black robes hurried past him like he was invisible. A security guard watched him closely from behind a metal detector. "Next!" called a woman at the information desk. Marcus walked up to her. His shoes squeaked on the marble floor. The shoes had holes in them too. Water from the snow outside had soaked through to his socks. "I'm here for court," Marcus said quietly. "Marcus Rivera." The woman looked at a computer screen. She frowned. "Courtroom 3B, 3rd floor. Judge Thornfield." "You're late." Marcus's stomach twisted. He had been walking for an hour to get here. The bus cost $2, and he only had 73 cents in his pocket. "Thank you," he said. The elevator was full of people who looked important. Marcus squeezed into a corner and tried to make himself small. A man in an expensive suit looked at Marcus's torn shoes and moved away. On the 3rd floor, Marcus found Courtroom 3B. Through the small window in the door, he could see it was packed with people. His heart started beating fast. He had never been in a real courtroom before. A bailiff opened the door. "You Rivera?" he asked. "Yes, sir. You're late. Judge doesn't like that. Go sit in the back." Marcus walked into the courtroom. It was bigger than he expected. The ceiling was high, and everything was made of dark wood. At the front, a man in black robes sat behind a tall desk. That had to be the judge. Judge William Thornfield looked to be about 50 years old. He had gray hair and sharp eyes behind wire glasses. He was reading papers and looked annoyed. Marcus found an empty spot on a bench in the back. The bench was hard and uncomfortable. Around him, other people waited for their cases to be called. Most of them had lawyers sitting next to them. Marcus was alone. A woman next to him whispered to her lawyer, "How long will this take?" "Hard to say with Thornfield," the lawyer whispered back. "He's strict, but fair." Marcus wiped his sweaty hands on his jeans. The jeans were too short now. He had grown taller over the past 8 months, but he couldn't buy new clothes. Case number 2024 JV3847, called the court clerk. State of Minnesota versus Marcus Rivera. Marcus's heart jumped. That was him. He stood up on shaky legs and walked toward the front of the courtroom. Every step felt like it took forever. He could feel people staring at him. "Approach the bench," Judge Thornfield said without looking up. Marcus walked to a small table in front of the judge's desk. His hands were shaking now. He put them behind his back so no one would see. Judge Thornfield finally looked at him. His eyes were cold and unfriendly. Marcus Rivera, age 17, charged with petty theft of food items valued at $4.99. The judge's voice was loud in the quiet courtroom. Marcus felt his face get hot with shame. "Son, where are your parents?" "Judge," Thornfield asked. Marcus cleared his throat. "I don't have any, sir." "Speak up, I can't hear you." "I said I don't have parents, Your Honor." Marcus's voice cracked on the words. Judge Thornfield looked through more papers. "Says here you've been living on the streets for 8 months. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir." The judge set the papers down and stared at Marcus. The stare made Marcus want to run away, but his feet felt stuck to the floor. Then something strange happened. Judge Thornfield's mouth started to twitch. At first, Marcus thought the judge was angry, but then he realized the judge was trying not to smile. A small chuckle escaped from Judge Thornfield's lips. The sound echoed in the quiet courtroom like a gunshot. People in the gallery started turning to look at each other. The court reporter looked up from her machine with surprise on her face. "You stole a sandwich because you were hungry?" Judge Thornfield asked. Now he wasn't trying to hide his smile anymore. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge's chuckle turned into real laughter. It wasn't a kind laugh. It was the kind of laugh that made Marcus feel 2 inches tall. "Well, well, well," Judge Thornfield said, still laughing. "That's quite a sob story, young man. Homeless teenager steals food because he's hungry? How original." Marcus felt like he couldn't breathe. His face burned with shame. Behind him, he heard a woman gasp. Someone else whispered, "That's not right." "Your Honor." Marcus tried to speak, but his voice came out as a squeak. "Save it." Judge Thornfield waved his hand in the air like he was shooing away a fly. "I've heard every excuse in the book, every sob story, every reason why someone thinks the law shouldn't apply to them." The judge leaned forward in his chair. His eyes were mean now. "Let me tell you something, Mr. Rivera. Being homeless doesn't give you the right to steal. Being hungry doesn't make it okay to take things that don't belong to you. The law is the law," Marcus wanted to explain. He wanted to tell the judge about sleeping in parking garages when it was 20 degrees below zero. He wanted to talk about going to school every day, even though he was exhausted and hungry. He wanted to say that he had never stolen anything before in his life, but the words wouldn't come out. His throat felt closed. 30 days in juvenile detention should teach you that stealing is wrong, Judge Thornfield said, regardless of your circumstances. The judge picked up his gavel. Marcus stared at it in horror. 30 days meant he would miss school. It meant he might not graduate. It meant he would break his promise to his grandmother. "Your Honor, please," Marcus started to say. "I said, save it!" The judge's voice boomed through the courtroom. The gavel came down hard on the wooden desk. The sound was like thunder. "Bailiff, take him away," Judge Thornfield said. Marcus felt like the world was spinning. This couldn't be happening. The bailiff stepped forward and put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. But then Judge Thornfield did something that made everyone in the courtroom freeze. The judge stood up. In 15 years on the bench, Judge William Thornfield had never left his seat during a proceeding. Never. The bailiff stopped moving. The court reporter's hands hung in the air above her keyboard. Every person in the gallery turned to stare. Judge Thornfield stepped down from his bench and walked around to the front. He stood directly in front of Marcus, so close that Marcus could see the silver threads in his tie. The judge's face had changed completely. The cold, mocking expression was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like pain. "Son," Judge Thornfield said, in a voice so quiet that people in the back had to lean forward to hear. "What was your grandmother's name?" Marcus stared at Judge Thornfield with wide eyes. The question about his grandmother caught him completely, off guard. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Elena Rivera, Your Honor," he finally whispered. The judge closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they looked different. Softer, somehow. "Elena Rivera, who worked in this courthouse for 15 years?" the judge asked. Marcus nodded, too shocked to speak. How did this judge know his abuela? Elena Rivera, who made the best tamales in Minnesota and brought them to the courthouse Christmas party every year? Now, Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "You knew my abuela." Before Judge Thornfield could answer, Marcus's mind flew back to 8 months ago. Back to when his life was completely different. Back to when he had a home and a family and dreams that seemed possible. It was June then. School had just ended, and Marcus Rivera was looking forward to summer vacation. He was 16 years old and lived with his grandmother in a small apartment on Phillips Avenue in Minneapolis. The apartment wasn't fancy, but it was home. It had 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living room where his grandmother watched her Spanish soap operas every evening. The walls were covered with pictures of Marcus at different ages, his first day of school, his debate team victories, his birthday parties. Marcus had lived there since he was 3 years old. That's when his parents died in a car accident on Highway 35W. He didn't remember much about his mom and dad, but his grandmother Elena had raised him like he was her own son. "Mijo," she would say, using the Spanish word for my son. "Education is the one thing no one can take from you. Promise me you'll always remember that." And Marcus did remember. He was a straight-A student at Roosevelt High School. He was captain of the debate team and had won 3 regional competitions. He worked part-time at Peterson's grocery store on Lake Street to help with bills. His dream was to become a lawyer. He wanted to help people who couldn't help themselves, just like his grandmother had taught him. Elena always said that was the most important thing a person could do. Elena worked as a cleaning lady at the Hennepin County Courthouse downtown. She had worked there for 15 years, mopping floors and cleaning bathrooms and emptying trash cans. The work was hard, and the pay wasn't much, but Elena was proud of her job. "I work in the Temple of Justice," she would tell Marcus. "That's important work." Every morning at 5 o'clock, Elena would get up and make breakfast for Marcus. Usually eggs and toast, sometimes pancakes on special days. She would pack him a lunch for school and give him money for the bus. "Work hard today, mijo," she would say as he left for school. "Make your abuela proud." And Marcus did work hard. He never missed school, never got in trouble, never gave Elena any reason to worry. At night, he would help her with English homework. Elena was taking classes at the community college to improve her language skills. Their life wasn't easy, but it was good. They had each other, and that was enough. But then, at the beginning of June, Elena started getting sick. At first, it was just a cough that wouldn't go away. Then, she started losing weight. She was always tired, even after sleeping all night. "It's nothing, mijo," she would say when Marcus worried. "Just getting old." But Marcus knew it was more than that. He made Elena go to the doctor at Hennepin County Medical Center. The doctor ran lots of tests and told them to come back in a week. That week felt like the longest week of Marcus's life. He watched his grandmother get sicker every day. She could barely eat, and walking up the stairs to their apartment made her breathe hard. When they went back to the doctor, he had bad news. Very bad news. "Mrs. Rivera," the doctor said gently, "the tests show that you have cancer, lung cancer, and it has spread to other parts of your body." Marcus felt like the world stopped spinning. "But you can fix it, right? You can make her better?" The doctor looked sad. "We can try treatments to help her feel better and maybe give her more time. But I have to be honest with you. This type of cancer is very serious." Elena took the news better than Marcus did. She held his hand and squeezed it tight. "How long?" she asked the doctor. "It's hard to say. Maybe a few months, maybe longer if we're lucky." Marcus started crying right there in the doctor's office. Elena put her arms around him. "Don't cry, mijo. We're going to make the most of whatever time we have." The next month was the hardest of Marcus's life. He spent every day after school at the hospital with Elena. She was getting chemotherapy, which made her even sicker at first. Her beautiful black hair started falling out, so she wore colorful scarves on her head. Marcus would sit next to her hospital bed and read to her from her favorite books. Sometimes he would tell her about his day at school or his plans for college. Elena would listen with her eyes closed, smiling. "Promise me you'll finish school," she said one evening when the medicine was making her very sleepy. "Promise me you'll become that lawyer you always talk about." "I promise, abuela, but you're going to get better. You have to." Elena smiled sadly. "Mijo, we both know that's not true. But that's okay. I've had a good life. I raised a wonderful grandson who is going to do great things." "Don't talk like that," Marcus said, holding her hand. "Please, listen to me," Elena said, her voice getting stronger. "When I'm gone, you're going to be okay. You're smart and strong and good. Don't let anyone tell you different." Elena died on July 15th, on a Tuesday morning when the sun was shining bright outside her hospital window. Marcus was holding her hand when it happened. One moment, she was breathing, and the next moment, she wasn't. The nurses were kind to Marcus, but they had to ask the hard question. "Is there anyone we can call? Any family?" Marcus shook his head. "It was just us. Just me and her." He was 17 years old and completely alone in the world. The funeral was small and sad. Only a few people came, some neighbors from their apartment building and 3 ladies from the courthouse who had worked with Elena. They all said nice things about his grandmother, but Marcus could barely listen. His heart felt broken into 1,000,000 pieces. Marcus used the little money Elena had saved to pay for the funeral. After all the bills were paid, he had exactly $127 left. That was everything. The landlord, Mr. Johnson, was not a mean man, but he had bills to pay too. He gave Marcus 1 month to figure things out. "I'm sorry, kid," Mr. Johnson said, standing in the doorway of the apartment. "I know this is hard, but I can't let you stay here without rent money." Marcus nodded. He understood. The rent was $800 a month. Even if he worked every hour he wasn't in school, he couldn't make that much money. Nobody would hire a 17-year-old full-time. For that month, Marcus tried everything. He applied for jobs at 20 different places. Most managers took one look at his age and said no. The few who said yes could only give him 10 or 15 hours a week. That wasn't nearly enough. He went to the school counselor, Mrs. Patterson, but he didn't tell her the whole truth. He was afraid. What if they put him in foster care? What if they moved him to a different school? He had heard scary stories from other kids about what happened when the government got involved. Is everything okay at home, Marcus? Mrs. Patterson asked one day after school. Yes, ma'am. Everything's fine. But everything wasn't fine. Everything was falling apart. On August 15th, exactly 1 month after Elena died, Marcus packed everything he owned into 2 black garbage bags. One bag had his clothes. The other had his school books, some pictures of Elena, and the last tamale she had made for him. He had kept it in the freezer, and now he carried it with him like a treasure. Marcus walked out of the only home he had ever known and had no idea where to go. Living on the streets was nothing like Marcus had seen in movies. In movies, homeless people seemed to have friends and places to gather. They had shopping carts full of things and knew where to find food. The reality was completely different. The reality was cold and scary and lonely. Marcus learned quickly that the most important thing was to stay invisible. If security guards or police officers noticed you, they would make you move. If store owners saw you hanging around, they would call someone to make you leave. So Marcus became a shadow. He slept in different places every night. Sometimes he could sleep in the 24-hour laundromat on Franklin Avenue. The fluorescent lights were bright and the washing machines were loud, but it was warm and safe. Other nights, he slept in the stairwells of parking garages downtown. The concrete was cold and hard, but at least it was dry. He learned to wake up early and leave before people started going to work. The hardest part was staying clean. Marcus found a gym that let people shower for $5, but he couldn't afford to do that very often. Sometimes he washed his hair in the bathroom at McDonald's or cleaned his face with wet paper towels. Food was always a problem. Marcus learned which restaurants threw away food that was still good to eat. Behind Panera Bread, they put day-old sandwiches in clean bags before throwing them away. The pizza place on University Avenue threw out whole pizzas that had been made. Wrong, but eating from dumpsters made Marcus feel ashamed. This wasn't how Elena had raised him. She had taught him to be proud and work hard for what he needed. The hardest part of all was school. Marcus was determined to keep his promise to his grandmother, so he went to Roosevelt High every single day. But it was almost impossible to focus when he was hungry and tired. Marcus would sit in class and try to listen to the teacher, but his stomach would growl so loud that other students turned to look at him. His clothes started to smell because he couldn't wash them regularly. His grades, which had always been perfect, began to slip. Some of his classmates noticed the changes. They whispered about him in the hallways and moved away when he sat near them in the cafeteria. Marcus, who had once been popular and confident, became quiet and invisible. In October, when the weather started getting cold, Marcus met Tony Clearwater near the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. Tony was a Native American man who looked to be about 40 years old. He had been living on the streets for 3 years. "First winter?" Tony asked, sitting down next to Marcus on a bench. "Yes, sir," Marcus said. "It's going to be rough, kid. Minneapolis winters will kill you if you're not careful." Tony shared his coffee with Marcus and taught him important things about surviving on the streets. "Rule number 1, Tony said. Never let them see you're scared. People can smell fear, and some people will hurt you if they think you're weak. Rule number 2, there are good people and bad people everywhere, on the streets and off the streets. You have to learn to tell the difference real quick." Tony also taught Marcus about the warming shelters that opened when the temperature dropped below freezing. He showed him which churches served free meals, on which days and which places had clean bathrooms he could use. "Most important thing," Tony said, "is don't give up hope. I know it's hard, but you're young. You can get out of this if you stay smart. But as winter came closer, staying smart got harder and harder. The shelters were always full, and sleeping outside when it was 20 degrees below zero was dangerous. Marcus got frostbite on his toes and a cough that wouldn't go away. By December, Marcus was getting desperate. He was losing weight and getting sick more often. Some mornings, he was so weak he could barely walk to school. That's when he started taking small things from stores. Never anything valuable, just food when he was really hungry. A banana from the grocery store, a package of crackers from the gas station, a candy bar when his blood sugar was so low he felt dizzy. Marcus told himself it was temporary, just until he could figure something else out. Just until winter was over. Just until he graduated and could get a real job. He was careful about it. He never took from the same store twice in 1 week. He never took anything expensive. He always looked sorry if anyone caught him. For 3 months, Marcus never got caught. He was getting good at being invisible. Until that cold February morning when he walked into Target and saw a turkey sandwich that cost $4.99. That Tuesday morning started like every other day for Marcus. He had spent the night in the Greyhound bus station on Hawthorne Avenue. Every few hours, a security guard would wake him up and make him move to a different seat. "This isn't a hotel, kid," the guard would say. "Keep moving." By 6 in the morning, Marcus was kicked out completely. The February air hit him like a slap in the face. The temperature was 15 degrees below zero. His breath made white clouds that froze before they disappeared. Marcus walked toward Roosevelt High School, but he was moving slowly. He hadn't eaten anything in 2 days, except a stale donut he found behind Dunkin' Donuts. His legs felt weak, and his head was dizzy. When he got to school, Marcus sat in the library instead of going to his first class. The librarian, Mrs. Kim, was nice and never asked questions when students came in early. Marcus put his head down on a table and tried to rest. "Are you feeling okay, Marcus?" Mrs. Kim asked quietly. Marcus lifted his head. "Yes, ma'am. Just tired." "You look pale. When did you last eat?" Marcus's stomach cramped at the mention of food. "I had breakfast," he lied. Mrs. Kim looked at him with worried eyes, but she didn't push. "Well, if you need anything, you let me know." The morning classes were torture. Marcus sat in the back of his math class and tried to focus on what the teacher was saying, but the numbers on the board looked blurry. His stomach was making loud growling noises that other students could hear. During lunchtime, while other students ate in the cafeteria, Marcus stayed in the library again. He pretended to read a book, but really he was just trying to ignore how hungry he was. He had 73 cents in his pocket, but that wasn't enough to buy anything from the vending machines. After school, Marcus walked slowly down University Avenue. He didn't want to go look for a place to sleep yet. It was only 3 o'clock, and most places wouldn't let him stay until evening. He passed the Target store where he sometimes bought small things with money he made from returning bottles and cans. The store was warm and bright, and Marcus didn't want to go back outside into the cold. Marcus walked through the automatic doors and felt the heat hit his face. For a moment, he just stood there and enjoyed being warm. A few customers walked past him, but nobody paid attention to one more teenager in the store. Marcus wandered through the aisles slowly. He wasn't planning to steal anything. He was just warm for the first time in hours, and he didn't want to leave. He walked past the electronics section where people were looking at phones and tablets. He walked past the clothes, where a mother was buying winter coats for her 2 little boys. Marcus remembered when Elena used to take him shopping for school clothes. She would always buy him one size too big so he could grow into them. Then Marcus found himself in the food section. There were aisles full of everything: cereal and pasta and cookies and fruit. The smell of the Starbucks counter made his mouth water and his stomach cramp with hunger. Near the front of the store was a refrigerated section with pre-made food, sandwiches and salads and fruit cups that people could grab quickly. Marcus stopped walking and stared at the sandwiches: turkey and cheese on wheat bread, ham and Swiss on a roll, chicken salad with lettuce. Each sandwich was in a clear plastics container with a price sticker: $4.99. Marcus's hands were shaking. He looked around to see if anyone was watching him. A few people were shopping nearby, but they were focused on their own things. Marcus thought about Tony's words: "Don't give up hope." But hope felt very far away when you were so hungry you could barely stand up. He thought about his grandmother and the promise he had made to her. How could he become a lawyer if he couldn't even feed himself? How could he help other people when he couldn't help himself? Marcus reached out and picked up the turkey sandwich. The plastic was cold against his warm hands. He looked at it for a long moment, then put it back down. "I can't," he whispered to himself. But his stomach cramped again, harder this time. Marcus felt dizzy and had to hold onto the shelf to keep from falling down. When was the last time he had eaten real food? Not scraps from a dumpster, but an actual meal. Before he could think about it anymore, Marcus grabbed the sandwich and put it inside his jacket. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. He zipped up his jacket and started walking toward the exit. "Stay calm," he told himself. "Just walk normal. Don't look suspicious." But Marcus didn't feel calm. He felt like everyone in the store was staring at him. He felt like there were bright lights pointing at him and sirens going off. His face was hot and red, and sweat was running down his back, even though he had been cold just minutes before. Marcus was almost to the doors when he heard the voice behind him. "Excuse me, young man." Marcus stopped walking. His whole body went cold. He turned around slowly and saw a security guard walking toward him. The guard was a big man with a kind face, but Marcus was still terrified. "Could you step over here with me, please?" the guard asked. Marcus followed the guard to a small office near the customer service counter. His legs felt like rubber, and he thought he might throw up. "I need you to take the sandwich out of your jacket," the guard said gently. Marcus didn't try to lie or make excuses. He unzipped his jacket and handed over the sandwich. His hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped it. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus Rivera." "How old are you, Marcus?" 17. The guard looked at Marcus carefully. He seemed to notice the holes in Marcus's shoes and the way his clothes hung on his thin body. "When did you last eat?" the guard asked. Marcus started to cry. He couldn't help it. All the shame and fear and hunger came pouring out of him at once. 2 days ago?" Marcus whispered through his tears. The guard's face got softer. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. But I have to call the police. It's store policy. I don't have a choice." Marcus nodded. He couldn't speak anymore. All he could think about was what Elena would say if she could see him now. She had raised him to be honest and proud. She had worked hard for 15 years, cleaning floors and never taking anything that didn't belong to her. And now her grandson was a thief. The police officers who came were not mean, but they weren't particularly kind either. They had seen this before: hungry teenagers who stole food. To them, Marcus was just another case to process. "Any family we can call?" one officer asked. Marcus shook his head. "It's just me." They took him to the Hennepin County Juvenile Detention Center to wait for his court date. For the first time in months, Marcus slept in a real bed with clean sheets. For the first time in days, he ate 3 full meals. That should have made him feel better, but it didn't. It made him feel worse. It made him realize how far he had fallen from the boy Elena had raised. On the day of his court appearance, Marcus was taken back to the courthouse, where his grandmother had worked for 15 years. As they walked through the halls, Marcus wondered if Elena's spirit was watching him. He wondered if she was disappointed in the choices he had made. Marcus had no idea that in a few hours everything would change. He had no idea that the judge who would decide his fate was someone who had known and loved Elena Rivera. He had no idea that his grandmother had never stopped trying to protect him, even after she was gone. The morning of Marcus's court hearing, a guard woke him up at 6 o'clock. "Rivera, time to get ready for court." Marcus sat up in his narrow bed. He had slept better in the juvenile detention center than he had in months, but he still felt tired. Today was the day that would decide what happened to his future. They gave him clean clothes to wear, khaki pants, and a white button-down shirt that was too big for him. The clothes smelled like laundry detergent, a smell Marcus hadn't experienced in a long time. He combed his hair with water and looked at himself in the small metal mirror. He looked like a different person than the confident debate team captain he used to be. His face was thinner, and his eyes looked older, but at least he looked clean and respectable. At 8 o'clock, Marcus was handcuffed and put into a van with 3 other teenagers who were also going to court. Nobody talked during the ride. Everyone was nervous about what the judge would decide. When they arrived at the Hennepin County Courthouse, Marcus felt strange walking through the same doors where his grandmother had entered every day for work. He wondered if Elena had ever imagined that her grandson would come here as a defendant instead of a lawyer. The juvenile courtroom was on the 3rd floor. It was smaller than Marcus had expected, but it still felt big and scary. Dark wood covered the walls, and the judge's bench was high above everything else. Marcus had dreamed of being in a courtroom someday, but not like this. A tired-looking woman approached him near the entrance. "Marcus Rivera?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Lisa Chen, your public defender. I'll be representing you today." Ms. Chen looked like she hadn't slept much. She was carrying a stack of files and kept checking her watch. "We have about 15 minutes. Before your case is called," she said, "let me look at your file." They sat on a bench in the hallway while Ms. Chen read through Marcus's paperwork. "This looks pretty straightforward," she said. "First offense, minor theft, you're 17. We'll probably get community service or probation." Marcus felt a tiny bit of hope. Community service he could handle. Probation wouldn't keep him from graduating. "Is there anything special about your case I should know?" Ms. Chen asked. "Any reason you stole the sandwich?" Marcus looked down at his hands. "I was hungry. I haven't had a real home in 8 months." Ms. Chen stopped reading and looked at him carefully. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm homeless. I've been living on the streets since my grandmother died last summer." Ms. Chen's whole expression changed. "Marcus, why didn't anyone tell me this? Why isn't this in your file?" "I never told anyone. I was scared they would put me in foster care." "Where? Have you been sleeping? What have you been eating?" Marcus told her about the bus stations and parking garages. He told her about the warming shelters and the food from dumpsters. He told her about trying to stay in school and keep his promise to Elena. Ms. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus, you can't live on the streets, especially not in Minnesota. Winters. It's not safe. I know. But I wanted to graduate. My grandmother made me promise. Tell me about your grandmother." Marcus's voice got softer. "Her name was Elena Rivera. She raised me after my parents died. She worked here, actually. She was a cleaning lady in this courthouse for 15 years. Ms. Chen wrote notes quickly. "Okay, we'll tell the judge about your situation. Sometimes they're understanding about cases like this, especially when there are special circumstances." When they entered the courtroom, Marcus was surprised by how many people were there. The benches were full of people waiting for their own cases. Some had lawyers in expensive suits. Others looked scared and alone, like Marcus. At the front of the courtroom sat Judge William Thornfield. Marcus could tell right away that this judge was different from what he had expected. Judge Thornfield looked stern and impatient. He went through case after case quickly, barely looking up from his papers. Case number 2024 JV 3821, State versus Jennifer Walsh. The judge called. A teenage girl walked to the front with her lawyer. She had been caught shoplifting makeup from Walgreens. Judge Thornfield listened to the facts, asked a few questions, and gave her 30 hours of community service. Next case. Case number 2024 JV 3834, State versus David Kim. A boy about Marcus's age approached the bench. He had been caught with marijuana at school. Judge Thornfield gave him probation and drug counseling. Next case. Marcus watched the judge handle each case. Judge Thornfield seemed fair but strict. He didn't seem mean, but he also didn't seem particularly caring. Marcus started to feel nervous again. Case number 2024 JV 3847, State versus Marcus. Rivera. Marcus's heart jumped. That was him. Ms. Chen touched his arm gently. "Just be honest and respectful," she whispered. "Tell the truth." Marcus stood up on shaky legs and walked to the front of the courtroom. Every step felt like it took forever. He could feel dozens of people watching him from the benches behind him. He stood at a small table facing Judge Thornfield's high bench. His hands were sweating, so he put them behind his back. Judge Thornfield looked down at Marcus's file. For a moment, the courtroom was completely quiet, except for the sound of papers rustling. Marcus Rivera, age 17, charged with petty theft of food items valued at $4.99, the judge read aloud. Marcus felt his face get hot with shame. Everyone in the courtroom now knew what he had done. Judge Thornfield looked up from the papers and stared directly at Marcus. His eyes were gray and cold behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Son, where are your parents?" the judge asked. Marcus cleared his throat. His voice came out smaller than he wanted. "I don't have any, sir." "Speak up! I can't hear you." "I said I don't have parents, Your Honor." This time his voice cracked on the words. Judge Thornfield flipped through more papers in the file. "Says here, you've been living on the streets for 8 months. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir." The judge set the papers down and looked at Marcus again. This time, his stare lasted longer. Marcus felt like the judge was looking right through him. Then something unexpected happened. Judge Thornfield's mouth started to twitch at the corners. At first, Marcus thought the judge was angry, but then he realized the judge was trying not to smile. A small chuckle escaped from Judge Thornfield's mouth. The sound echoed in the quiet courtroom like a gunshot. Marcus felt confused and scared. Why was the judge laughing? People in the gallery behind Marcus started whispering to each other. The court reporter looked up from her machine with a surprised expression. "You stole a sandwich because you were hungry?" Judge Thornfield asked. Now he wasn't trying to hide his smile anymore. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Thornfield's chuckle turned into real laughter. It wasn't a kind laugh. It was the kind of laugh that made Marcus feel ashamed and small. Well, 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 Judge Thornfield said, still laughing. That's quite a sob story, young man. Homeless teenager steals food because he's hungry. How original. Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. His face burned with embarrassment. Behind him, he heard a woman gasp. Someone else whispered, "That's terrible." But Judge Thornfield wasn't finished. "Save it." Judge Thornfield waved his hand in the air like he was shooing away a fly. "I've heard every excuse in the book, every sob story, every reason why someone thinks the law shouldn't apply to them." Marcus felt tears starting to form in his eyes, but he forced them back. He would not cry in front of all these people. The judge leaned forward in his chair. His voice got louder and meaner. "Let me tell you something, Mr. Rivera. Being homeless doesn't give you the right to steal. Being hungry doesn't make it okay to take things that don't belong to you. The law is the law, regardless of your circumstances." Marcus wanted to explain about sleeping in parking garages when it was 20 degrees below zero. He wanted to tell the judge about going to school every day, even though he was exhausted and hungry. He wanted to say that he had never stolen anything before in his whole life. But the words wouldn't come out. His throat felt closed up. Behind Marcus, people in the courtroom were getting upset. He could hear them whispering angrily. "This isn't right," a woman said. "He's just a kid," a man added. But Judge Thornfield ignored them. He picked up his wooden gavel and held it in the air. 30 days in juvenile detention should teach you that stealing is wrong," the judge announced, "regardless of your circumstances." Marcus felt like the world was spinning around him. 30 days meant he would miss school. It meant he might not graduate. It meant he would break his promise to his grandmother. "Your Honor, please," Marcus started to say. "I said save it." Judge Thornfield's voice boomed through the courtroom. The gavel came down hard on the wooden desk. The sound was like thunder. It was final. It was over. "Bailiff, take him away," Judge Thornfield ordered. Marcus felt like he couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. The bailiff, a large man in a uniform, stepped forward and put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. But then Judge Thornfield did something that made everyone in the courtroom freeze. The judge stood up. "In 15 years, on." The bench, Judge William Thornfield had never left his seat during a court proceeding. Never. Not once. The bailiff stopped moving. His hand was still on Marcus's shoulder, but he wasn't walking anymore. The court reporter's hands hung in the air above her keyboard, like she had forgotten how to type. Every single person in the gallery turned to stare. Judge Thornfield stepped down from his high bench. He walked around to the front where Marcus was standing. The judge moved slowly, like he was thinking hard about something. When Judge Thornfield stopped, he was standing directly in front of Marcus. So close that Marcus could see the silver threads in the judge's black tie. So close that Marcus could smell his aftershave. The judge's face had completely changed. The cold, mocking expression was gone. The mean smile had disappeared. In its place was something that looked almost like pain. The entire courtroom was so quiet that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. "Son," Judge Thornfield said, in a voice so soft that people in the back rows had to lean forward to hear him. "What was your grandmother's name?" Marcus stared at the judge with wide, confused eyes. This question came from nowhere. What did his grandmother have to do with stealing a sandwich? "Elena Rivera, Your Honor," Marcus whispered. Judge Thornfield closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they looked watery. "Elena Rivera, who worked in this courthouse for 15 years?" the judge asked quietly. Marcus nodded, too shocked to speak. How did this judge know? "His abuela, Elena Rivera, who made the best tamales in Minnesota and brought them to the courthouse Christmas party every year? Now Marcus's eyes filled with tears. You knew my abuela? Judge Thornfield's voice grew even softer. Elena Rivera, who never missed a day of work, even when she was getting chemotherapy? The courtroom was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Marcus felt his world spinning in a completely different way now. She never told me she knew any judges personally, Marcus said. Your grandmother was a proud woman, Judge Thornfield said. She wouldn't have wanted to make it seem like she was asking for special treatment. The judge paused. She talked about you all the time, Marcus. Every time I saw her in the hallway, she would tell me about your grades, your debate team victories, your dreams of becoming a lawyer. Tears were now flowing freely down Marcus's face. She did? She was so proud of you. She would say, Judge Thornfield, my Marcus is going to be a lawyer someday. He's going to help people who can't help themselves. Marcus could barely stand. His legs felt weak. Judge Thornfield turned to address the entire courtroom. His voice got stronger and louder. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to explain something to you. What you witnessed here today, my behavior toward this young man, was a test. Confused murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Ms. Chen looked as puzzled as everyone else. Judge Thornfield continued. For 8 months, I have been wondering what happened to Elena Rivera's grandson. She stopped talking about him in her final weeks at work, and I could see the worry in her eyes. When she died, I tried to find out what happened to Marcus, but the system failed him. The judge turned back to Marcus. I knew who you were the moment you walked into my courtroom. I recognized Elena's eyes, but I needed to understand what you had been through. I needed to see if the streets had hardened your heart, or if you were still the boy your grandmother described. Marcus felt like he was in a dream. None of this felt real. Judge Thornfield's voice grew stronger. When you stood here and took my ridicule without fighting back, when you accepted responsibility for your actions even though you were hungry and desperate, when you showed grace under the most humiliating circumstances, you proved that Elena Rivera raised you well. Marcus could barely breathe. I don't understand. The laughter, the harsh words, none of it was real, son. It was all an act. I needed everyone in this courtroom to see what I saw. A good kid who has been failed by every system that was supposed to protect him. Judge Thornfield turned to face the gallery full of people. How many of you were angry at me for the way I treated this boy? Raise your hands. Nearly every hand in the courtroom went up. People were nodding and wiping tears from their eyes. Good, the judge said. That anger tells me there are still people in this world who care about justice, who care about compassion. Now, let me tell you what we're going to do about it. Judge Thornfield walked back to his bench, but he didn't sit down. Instead, he stood in front of it and spoke to the courtroom like he was giving an important speech. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have witnessed today is not just the story of one homeless teenager. It's the story of a system that fails our most vulnerable children every single day. He pointed toward Marcus, who was still standing at the front of the courtroom with tears on his face. This young man has been living on the streets of Minneapolis for 8 months. 8 months! He has been going to school every day, trying to keep a promise to his deceased grandmother. He has been surviving on scraps and sleeping in parking garages, and not one adult, not one, reached out to help him. A woman in the third row wiped tears from her eyes. A man in a business suit shook his head in dismay. The whole courtroom was listening carefully to every word. "I have been a judge for 15 years, Judge Thornfield continued. "I have seen thousands of cases come through this courtroom, but I have never seen a young person show more dignity and strength than Marcus Rivera showed here today." He looked directly at Marcus. "Your grandmother would be proud of the man you're becoming." Marcus was crying openly now, but he didn't care. For the first time in 8 months, he felt like someone truly saw him. Someone understood what he had been through. "Now," the judge said, "here's what's going to happen. The charges against Marcus Rivera are dismissed." The gallery erupted in applause. People were clapping and cheering. Ms. Chen looked stunned but relieved. She patted Marcus on the back. Furthermore, Judge Thornfield raised his voice above the clapping. "I am personally going to ensure that Marcus has a place to live, a way to finish school, and support to pursue his dreams of becoming a lawyer." The applause got even louder. Marcus felt like he was dreaming. Judge Thornfield pulled out his cell phone right there in the courtroom. "I am calling Sarah Mitchell, the Director of Youth Emergency Services. They have an excellent transitional living program for young people facing homelessness." The judge dialed the number while everyone watched. Marcus could hear his heart beating. In his ears, "Sarah, this is Judge Thornfield. I need your help with something urgent." While the judge was on the phone, something amazing started happening. People from the gallery began walking up to Marcus. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes approached him first. "Hi, honey," she said, pressing a business card into his hand. "I'm Janet Thompson. I own Thompson's Restaurant downtown. If you want a job, call me. I always need good workers." A man in a gray suit was next. "I'm David Park. I'm a lawyer here in Minneapolis. If you're serious about law school, I'd like to help with your applications and maybe provide some mentorship." An elderly couple introduced themselves as Robert and Mary Johnson. The woman had silver hair and reminded Marcus a little bit of his grandmother. "We've been looking for a young person to help with yard work and errands," Mrs. Johnson said. "We have a small apartment above our garage. It's not much, but it's clean and warm." More people kept coming. A woman who worked at the public library offered to help Marcus with college research. A man who coached debate teams at the community college wanted to work with Marcus on his speaking skills. A lady who ran a clothing donation center promised to help Marcus get proper clothes for job interviews. By the time Judge Thornfield finished his phone call, Marcus was surrounded by people offering help. He had more business cards and phone numbers than he could hold. "Sarah can see you this afternoon," the judge announced to Marcus. "She has emergency housing available starting tonight." Marcus tried to speak, but no words would come out. His throat felt tight with emotion. Judge Thornfield stepped down from the bench again and walked over to Marcus. He put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Elena used to tell me that you believed in justice," the judge said quietly. "She said you wanted to help people who couldn't help themselves. Well, son, today you're going to learn that sometimes, when we're very lucky, the world helps us back." Marcus finally found his voice. "Judge Thornfield, I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. You need to succeed. You need to graduate from high school and go to college and become that lawyer your grandmother dreamed about. That's how you thank me." Ms. Chen approached them with a big smile on her face. "Marcus, I've never seen anything like this in 15 years of being a public defender. This is incredible." "What happens now?" Marcus asked. Judge Thornfield looked at his watch. "Now you go with Ms. Chen to meet Sarah Mitchell. She'll get you set up with housing and help you figure out the next steps. Then you start rebuilding your life." Janet Thompson, the restaurant owner, stepped forward again. "Marcus, I meant what I said about the job. Can you come in tomorrow morning for a quick interview?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said. "What time?" "How about 8 o'clock? The restaurant is at 412 Nicollet Avenue, right downtown." David Park, the lawyer, handed Marcus another card. "Call me this weekend. We need to talk about getting you caught up on any schoolwork you've missed and start thinking about college. Applications." Mrs. Johnson smiled warmly. "And you come have dinner with us on Sunday. Mr. Johnson makes the best pot roast in Minnesota." Marcus looked around at all these people who were offering to help him. An hour ago, he had thought his life was over. Now he had more opportunities than he knew what to do with. "I can't believe this is real," Marcus said. Judge Thornfield smiled, a real, warm smile this time. "It's real, son. But remember, this is just the beginning. These people are giving you chances, but you have to take them. You have to work hard and make good choices." "I will, Your Honor. I promise." "Good. And Marcus?" "Yes, sir?" "Your grandmother would be so proud of you today. Not because people are helping you, but because of how you handled yourself when you thought no one cared. That's the kind of character that makes a good lawyer." As people started leaving the courtroom, many of them stopped to shake Marcus's hand or give him words of encouragement. The woman who had gasped when the judge first laughed told Marcus she was sorry that adults had failed him. "You're going to do great things," she said. "I can tell." Ms. Chen gathered up her papers and helped Marcus organize all the business cards he had received. "Ready to go meet Sarah?" she asked. Marcus looked back at Judge Thornfield, who was now talking to other court staff. The judge caught his eye and gave him a thumbs up. "Ready," Marcus said. As they walked out of the courtroom, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in 8 months. He felt hope. Real, solid hope that his life could get better. He thought about Elena and the promise he had made to her. For the first time since she died, Marcus believed he might actually be able to keep that promise. He was going to graduate from high school, he was going to go to college, and someday he was going to become a lawyer who helped people who couldn't help themselves, just like his grandmother had always dreamed. 3 hours later, Marcus sat in a small but clean apartment at the Youth Emergency Services Transitional Living Facility on East Franklin Avenue. The apartment had a bed with real sheets, a desk by the window, a small refrigerator, and, most importantly, a door with a lock that only he controlled. Sarah Mitchell had been waiting for them when Marcus and Ms. Chen arrived. Sarah was a woman, in her 40s with short brown hair and a warm smile. She had worked with homeless youth for 12 years and had seen many stories like Marcus's. "Judge Thornfield told me about your situation," Sarah said as she showed Marcus around the facility. "This is a good program. You can stay here for up to 2 years, which should be long enough for you to finish high school and start college." They walked through a common area where other young people were studying and watching TV. Some looked to be Marcus's age. Others were older, maybe 19 or 20. "What do I have to do to stay here?" Marcus asked. "The rules are simple," Sarah explained. "Maintain good grades in school. Meet with a counselor once a week. Help with community service projects on weekends. No drugs, no alcohol, no trouble with the law." "That's it?" Sarah smiled. "That's it. The goal isn't to control you, Marcus. The goal is to help you become independent and successful. You're not charity cases here. You're investments in the future." Marcus's apartment was on the 2nd floor. It was small, but it felt like a palace compared to sleeping in parking garages. The walls were painted light blue, and there was a window that looked out over the street. "The bathroom is shared with the room next door," Sarah said. "But there's a schedule, so everyone gets their turn." Laundry is in the basement, free to use. Marcus stood in the middle of his new room and turned in a slow circle. I can't believe this is real. It's real, Sarah said. But Marcus, I want you to understand something. This program works because the young people who come here want it to work. We're giving you a chance, but you have to take it. I will. I promise. Sarah handed him a key. This is yours. Dinner is at 6 in the common room downstairs. Tomorrow, we'll get you registered for counseling and talk about getting you caught up at school. After Sarah left, Marcus sat on his bed and looked around his new home. For the first time in 8 months, he was alone in a safe place. He didn't have to worry about security guards waking him up. He didn't have to worry about where he would sleep tomorrow night. Marcus's first hot shower in months felt like a miracle. The water was warm and clean, and there was real soap and shampoo. He stood under the spray for 15 minutes, just enjoying the feeling of being truly clean. When he looked in the bathroom mirror afterward, he saw someone he barely recognized. The scared, dirty boy from the streets was still there, but there was something else, too. Something that looked like hope. That evening, Marcus called Janet Thompson about the restaurant job. "Hello, Thompson's Restaurant," a cheerful voice answered. "Hi, this is Marcus Rivera. I met you in court today. You said I could call about a job?" "Marcus, I'm so glad you called. Can you come in tomorrow morning at 8 for an interview?" "Yes, ma'am. I'll be there." "Great. And Marcus? Judge Thornfield already called me. He told me you're reliable and hardworking. That's all I need to know." After dinner in the common room, real food with other people his age, Marcus called Roosevelt High School. The secretary transferred him to Mrs. Patterson, his English teacher. "Marcus!" Mrs. Patterson sounded worried and relieved at the same time. "Where have you been? We've been so concerned about you." "I'm okay now, Mrs. Patterson. I had some problems, but they're getting fixed. Can I come back to school tomorrow?" "Of course." "But Marcus, I need to ask, are you safe? Do you have a place to live?" "Yes, ma'am. I do now." "Good. Come see me first thing tomorrow morning. We'll figure out how to get you caught up on your schoolwork." That night, Marcus lay in his real bed with clean sheets and a pillow. For the first time in 8 months, he wasn't cold. He wasn't hungry. He wasn't scared about where he would sleep the next night. He thought about his grandmother and wished she could see him now. He thought about Judge Thornfield and all the people who had offered to help him. He thought about the promise he had made to Elena about becoming a lawyer. For the first time, since Elena died, that promise felt possible again. The next morning, Marcus woke up at 6 o'clock without an alarm. He was used to getting up early from his months on the streets, but this time, he wasn't waking up because a security guard was making him move. He was waking up because he had somewhere to go. Marcus put on clean clothes and walked to Thompson's Restaurant for his interview. The restaurant was on Nicollet Avenue in downtown Minneapolis, not far from the courthouse. It was a small, friendly place that served breakfast and lunch to office workers and families. Janet Thompson met him at the door. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes. She looked like someone's favorite aunt. "Right on time," she said with a smile. "I like that." The interview lasted 15 minutes. Janet asked Marcus about his school schedule and whether he was willing to work hard. She asked if he could work after school and on weekends. "The job is mostly washing dishes and cleaning tables," Janet explained. "It's not glamorous work, but it's honest work. The pay is $12 an hour to start." "That sounds perfect," Marcus said. "Good. Can you start today after school?" "Yes, ma'am." Janet shook his hand. "Welcome to the Thompsons family, Marcus." After the interview, Marcus went to Roosevelt High School. Walking through the halls felt strange after being away for a week. Some students stared at him, probably wondering where he had been. Others just ignored him, like always. Mrs. Patterson was waiting for him in her classroom. "I'm so glad you're back," she said, giving him a hug. "We need to talk about what you've missed and how to get you caught up." Marcus told her about his new living situation and his job at the restaurant. He didn't tell her about being homeless or stealing the sandwich. That was too hard to talk about yet. "The important thing is that you're here now," Mrs. Patterson said. "We're going to make sure you graduate on time." Over the next few weeks, Marcus's life began to feel normal again. He went to school every day and worked at the restaurant after classes. The work was hard. Washing dishes for hours made his hands raw and his back sore, but it felt good to earn money honestly. His co-workers at the restaurant were friendly and helpful. Maria, the head cook, would sometimes pack extra food for Marcus to take home. Tom, the other dishwasher, showed Marcus shortcuts that made the work easier. "You're a good worker," Janet told Marcus after his first week. "Keep this up, and I'll give you more hours during the summer." David Park, the lawyer who had approached him in court, met with Marcus every Saturday morning at a coffee shop near the courthouse. They talked about college applications, law school requirements, and what it really meant to be a lawyer. "Your grandmother was right," David said one Saturday morning. "The law is about helping people who can't help themselves. But it's also about making sure the system works fairly for everyone." Marcus nodded. "That's what I want to do." "Good. Because the world needs more lawyers who understand what it's like to struggle." David helped Marcus research colleges with good pre-law programs. They looked at scholarships for students who had overcome difficult circumstances. They practiced interview skills and talked about writing personal essays. "You have a powerful story," David said. "But remember, your story isn't just about what happened to you. It's about what you did with what happened to you." The Johnsons, the elderly couple from the courtroom, became like surrogate grandparents to Marcus. Every Sunday, he had dinner at their house and helped with small projects around their home. Mr. Johnson taught him how to fix leaky faucets and paint walls. Mrs. Johnson made sure he was eating enough and gave him advice about life. "Your grandmother raised a fine young man," Mrs. Johnson told him one Sunday evening. "She would be so proud of how you're handling everything." Judge Thornfield checked on Marcus's progress regularly. Sometimes he would call Sarah Mitchell for updates. Sometimes he would stop by Thompson's restaurant when Marcus was working. "How are the grades?" he would ask. "Straight A's again," Marcus would report proudly. "And the college applications?" "David is helping me apply to pre-law programs. I think I have a good chance at getting scholarships." By spring, Marcus had completely transformed. He had gained back the weight he had lost on the streets. His clothes fit properly because Mrs. Johnson had taken him shopping. He smiled more often and spoke up in class again. Most importantly, he had hope for the future. Real, solid hope that his dreams could come true. 1 year after his day in court, Marcus Rivera stood at the same podium where lawyers presented their cases in Hennepin County Courthouse. But this time, he was there as a speaker, not a defendant. The occasion was the first annual conference on youth homelessness, organized by the county to raise awareness and improve services for young people without homes. Marcus had been asked to share his story with an audience of judges, social workers, police officers, and community leaders. Looking out at the packed courtroom, Marcus could see Judge Thornfield sitting in the front row. Sarah Mitchell was there too, along with Janet Thompson, David Park, and the Johnsons. Even Mrs. Patterson had come to hear him speak. Marcus wore a navy blue suit that Mrs. Johnson had helped him pick out. His hair was neatly cut, and he stood, tall and confident. He looked like a different person than the scared, hungry teenager who had stood in this same room a year ago. "A year ago," Marcus began, his voice clear and strong, "I stood in Courtroom 3B as a hungry, homeless teenager who had stolen a sandwich. I thought my life was over. I thought I had lost everything that mattered to me." The audience listened carefully. Many of them had heard rumors about Judge Thornfield's unusual handling of Marcus's case, but few knew the complete story. What I didn't know was that sometimes losing everything is the first step toward finding something better. Marcus told them about his grandmother Elena and how much she had meant to him. He talked about her death and how he had ended up on the streets. He described the cold nights in parking garages and the shame of eating from dumpsters. The hardest part wasn't being hungry or cold, Marcus said. The hardest part was feeling invisible, feeling like nobody cared whether I lived or died. Some people in the audience wiped tears from their eyes. A woman in the second row was writing notes quickly. Marcus talked about how difficult it was to ask for help when you were a teenager, how scared he had been of being put in foster care or moved to a different school, how the system had programs to help, but they were hard to find and harder to access. But I also want to tell you about the power of one person who cared enough to act. Marcus gestured toward Judge Thornfield, who looked uncomfortable with the attention, but proud at the same time. Judge Thornfield didn't just help me that day in court. He showed me that the system can work when people remember that we're dealing with human beings, not just case numbers. The applause was loud and long. Judge Thornfield nodded and smiled. Marcus continued his speech by talking about what had happened since that day in court. He told them about his job at Thompson's restaurant, his mentorship with David Park, and his success in school. "I'm graduating next month as valedictorian of my class," Marcus announced. "And in the fall, I'll be starting college at the University of Minnesota on a full scholarship." More applause filled the courtroom. Marcus could see Mrs. Patterson clapping, with tears in her eyes. "But the most important thing I've learned this year is that my story isn't unique. There are dozens of young people in Minneapolis right now who are going through what I went through. Sleeping in cars, hiding in libraries, trying to stay in school while fighting just to survive." Marcus's voice got more passionate as he continued. "We can do better. We have to do better. These kids aren't statistics or problems to be solved. They're somebody's grandson or daughter. They have dreams and potential, just like I did." When Marcus finished his speech, the entire courtroom stood up and clapped. People were wiping their eyes and nodding their heads. Several audience members came up afterward to shake his hand and ask questions. A woman named Dr. Lisa Chen introduced herself as the director of a new program at the University of Minnesota. "We're starting a scholarship program specifically for students who have experienced homelessness," she explained. "We'd like you to be one of our first recipients." Marcus's eyes widened. "Really? Your grades are excellent, your test scores are strong, and your life experience gives you a perspective that will be valuable in law school. We think you'd be perfect for our pre-law track." After the conference, Marcus rode to Elena's grave with Judge Thornfield and his wife Margaret. It was something they did on important days, a tradition that had started a few months after the court case. The cemetery was quiet and peaceful. Elena's headstone was simple but beautiful, with her name and the dates of her birth and death. Below that, Marcus had added an inscription. "She believed in education and love." Marcus knelt down and placed fresh flowers on the grave. White roses, Elena's favorites. "Abuela," Marcus said quietly, "I kept my promise. I'm graduating next week, and I'm going to college. I'm going to become a lawyer, just like you always wanted." Judge Thornfield stood beside him. "She would be so proud of you, son. I wish I could tell her about everything that's happened, about you and Sarah, and all the people who helped me." "I think she knows," Margaret said softly. "I think she's been watching over you this whole time." Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about his grandmother and all the sacrifices she had made for him. Elena had cleaned floors and worked 2 jobs so he could have books and clothes and opportunities. She had never lived to see him graduate, but her love and teachings had carried him through his darkest days. "You know," Marcus said, standing up, "I used to think Elena died too soon. I thought it was unfair that she didn't get to see me succeed. But now I think maybe she did see it. Maybe she saw it in her heart, even before it happened." That evening, Marcus had dinner at the Johnsons' house, like he did every Sunday. But this Sunday was special because his whole chosen family was there. Judge Thornfield and Margaret, Sarah Mitchell, Janet Thompson, David Park, and Mrs. Patterson. They were celebrating Marcus's acceptance to college and his upcoming graduation. Mrs. Johnson had made a huge meal with all of Marcus's favorite foods. "A toast," Judge Thornfield said, raising his glass of apple cider. "To Elena Rivera, who raised an extraordinary young man, and to Marcus, who honored her memory by never giving up on his dreams." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Elena and Marcus." As they ate dinner, Marcus looked around the table at these people who had become his family. A year ago, he had been completely alone in the world. Now he was surrounded by people who loved him and believed in him. "I have an announcement," Marcus said when dessert was served. "I've decided what I want to do after I become a lawyer." Everyone stopped eating and looked at him. "I want to start a program that helps homeless youth navigate the legal system and access services. I want to make sure no kid falls through the cracks like I did." "That's a wonderful idea," Sarah said. "The system definitely needs advocates who understand what these kids are going through." David Park nodded. "There's a real need for that kind of work. And who better to do it than someone who's been there?" Judge Thornfield smiled. "Your grandmother always said you would help people who couldn't help themselves. I think this is exactly what she had in mind. I want to call it the Elena Rivera Youth Advocacy Program," Marcus said, "to honor her memory and everything she taught me." Mrs. Johnson started crying happy tears. "Oh, honey, that's perfect. She would be so honored." As the evening wound down, Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude and purpose. He had survived the worst time of his life and come out stronger. More importantly, he had found his calling: to help other young people who were facing the same challenges he had overcome. Tomorrow, he would graduate from high school. In the fall, he would start college. And someday, he would become the lawyer his grandmother had always dreamed about. But tonight, surrounded by the people who had saved his life and loved him back to wholeness, Marcus Rivera felt like the luckiest person in the world. 2 years later, Marcus Rivera walked across the stage at his college graduation ceremony. He was graduating summa cum laude with a degree in political science and had been accepted to the 3 law schools. In the audience, Judge Thornfield, Sarah Mitchell, Janet Thompson, David Park, and the Johnsons cheered loudly. Marcus had spent 4 wonderful years building his new life. He had worked part-time at Thompson's restaurant all through college. He had volunteered at youth emergency services every weekend. He had started a support group for other young people who had experienced homelessness. But there was one more surprise waiting for Marcus, one that would reveal the complete truth about that day in the courtroom 4 years ago. After the graduation ceremony, Judge Thornfield asked Marcus to meet him privately in his chambers at the courthouse. When Marcus arrived, he found not just the judge, but also Sarah Mitchell and a woman he didn't recognize. "Marcus," Judge Thornfield said, "I want you to meet someone. This is Elena Vasquez. She works for the Department of Child Protection Services." Marcus shook her hand, confused about why she was there. "Marcus," Elena Vasquez said, opening a file folder, "I need to tell you something about the day you appeared in Judge Thornfield's courtroom, something that's been classified until now." She spread papers across the judge's desk. "For 6 months before your court appearance, Judge Thornfield had been working with our department on a special project. We had identified dozens of homeless youth in the Minneapolis area who were falling through the cracks of the system." Marcus looked at Judge Thornfield with confusion. "I don't understand." "Your case wasn't random, son," the judge said gently. "We had been looking for you specifically ever since your grandmother died," Elena Vasquez continued. "Your grandmother had filed paperwork with our department before she passed away. She was worried about what would happen to you and wanted to make sure you would be taken care of. But due to a filing error, the paperwork was lost in the system." Marcus felt his knees go weak. She tried to get help for me?" "More than that," Judge Thornfield said. 3 weeks before she died, Elena came to see me personally in this office. She told me about you, about your dreams of becoming a lawyer, about how worried she was. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I would look out for you." Tears were streaming down Marcus's face. "But then, why did you let me live on the streets for 8 months?" "Because we couldn't find you," Elena Vasquez explained. "You were very good at staying hidden. We had social workers looking for you at schools, shelters, and libraries. But you never stayed in one place long enough, and you were careful to avoid official attention." Judge Thornfield leaned forward. "The day you appeared in my courtroom was the first time we had seen you since your grandmother's funeral. But I couldn't just immediately offer help. That would have looked suspicious to other court personnel and might have created legal problems. So the whole thing, the laughter, the harsh sentence, it was all planned?" "Not exactly," the judge said. "I knew I wanted to help you, but I needed to do it in a way that would be legal and wouldn't undermine confidence in the court system. The idea came to me in that moment when I saw you standing there, so brave and dignified despite everything you'd been through." Elena Vasquez nodded. "Judge Thornfield called me during the lunch recess that day. He told me his plan and asked if we could have emergency services ready. I had Sarah Mitchell standing by with housing options. But the people in the courtroom, their reactions were real? Completely real," Judge Thornfield smiled. "That was the genius of it. Their genuine outrage at my behavior proved that most people do care about justice and compassion, and their willingness to help you afterward showed that community support was available. We just needed to activate it." Sarah Mitchell spoke up. "What Judge Thornfield did was brilliant. Instead of just placing you in the system, he created a situation where the community chose to embrace you. That kind of organic support is much more powerful and sustainable than government assistance alone." Marcus was quiet for a long time, processing everything he had learned. "So my grandmother did try to help me. She didn't just leave me alone. She loved you more than anything in the world," Judge Thornfield said, "and she trusted me to keep my promise to her. I hope I've done that." Marcus looked around the room at these people who had orchestrated his rescue and had become his family. "You did more than keep a promise. You gave me my life back." "No, son. You did that yourself. We just provided some opportunities. You're the one who had the courage to take them and the strength to succeed." Elena Vasquez closed her file. "There's one more thing. We've used your case as a model for a new statewide program. It's called the Elena Rivera Initiative, named after your grandmother. It's designed to identify at-risk youth before they become homeless and to create community support networks like the one that formed around you. Really? We've helped 112 young people so far, Sarah Mitchell said, all because of what we learned from your situation. Judge Thornfield stood up. Your grandmother always said you would help people who couldn't help themselves. She was right, just not in the way any of us expected. You've helped them by allowing us to learn from your story and create better systems. Marcus felt overwhelmed with emotion. All these years, he had thought he was just lucky that Judge Thornfield happened to know his grandmother. Now he learned that Elena had arranged everything, even from beyond the grave. She never stopped protecting me, Marcus whispered. Never, Judge Thornfield confirmed. Even when she was dying, she was thinking about your future. Elena Vasquez gathered her papers. The Elena Rivera Initiative has become a model program that other states are copying. Your grandmother's legacy is helping young people all across the country. As they prepared to leave the courthouse, Marcus stopped in the hallway where his grandmother used to work. On the wall was a plaque he had never noticed before. In memory of Elena Rivera, 1952-2023, education is the one thing no one can take from you. Dedicated by the Hennepin County Court staff, below Elena's plaque was a newer one. The Elena Rivera Initiative Helping Young People Who Cannot Help Themselves founded. 2024, Judge Thornfield put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. She never stopped believing in you, son. And now, because of her faith and your strength, hundreds of other kids have hope too. Marcus touched both plaques gently. Thank you, Abuela, he whispered, for everything, for never giving up on me, even when I didn't know you were still fighting. For me. As they walked out of the courthouse together, Judge Thornfield asked, So, have you decided which law school you're going to attend? Marcus smiled, the same confident smile he'd had before his world fell apart, but deeper now, earned. Through struggle and strengthened by love and purpose. University of Minnesota. I want to stay here and work on the Elena Rivera Initiative. I want to help kids like me know that they're not alone, that someone is always looking out for them. Your grandmother would be proud. I know she would. And Judge Thornfield? Yes? Thank you for keeping your promise to her. Thank you for teaching me that sometimes the system works exactly the way it's supposed to. When people remember that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about hope and second chances in love. Judge Thornfield smiled. Elena taught you well, son. She taught you that helping people who can't help themselves is the most important work anyone can do. And now I get to spend my whole life doing that work. Just like she always dreamed. The courthouse doors closed behind them as they stepped into the bright afternoon sun. Marcus Rivera was no longer the scared, hungry boy who had stolen a sandwich. He was a college graduate, a future lawyer, and a living testament to the power of love, community, and never giving up. Most importantly, he was proof that sometimes the people who love us most find ways to protect us even after they're gone. Elena Rivera had kept her promise to raise a good man who would help others, and that man would spend his life making sure no other child would ever feel as alone as he once had. The Elena Rivera Initiative would help hundreds more young people, and each one of them would carry forward the lesson that Marcus had learned, that love never dies, that community can heal anything, and that everyone deserves a second chance to chase their dreams. In the end, Judge Thornfield's plan had worked perfectly. But it wasn't really the judge's plan at all. It was Elena Rivera's final gift to her grandson and to all the children who would benefit from the program that bore her name. Marcus Rivera was going to be a lawyer, just like his grandmother had always known he would be. And he was going to help people who couldn't help themselves, just like Elena Rivera had taught him. Some promises, Marcus realized, are too important to be broken by something as small as death. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and tell us what city or country you're in. It's amazing to see how stories like this touch hearts all around the world. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and thought-provoking stories like this one. Your support helps us continue sharing tales that matter. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. Stories about kindness, second chances, and never giving up need to be heard by as many people as possible. You never know who might need to hear Marcus's message of hope today. Sometimes the smallest act of sharing can create the biggest impact. Just like Judge Thornfield and Elena Rivera showed us, when we look out for each other, incredible things can happen. Thank you for listening, and remember, everyone deserves a second chance to chase their dreams.